Hey everybody, what's happening? We're back. It is Friday. It is the Friday FARcast, and I guess technically speaking, this really is the first Friday of the month. Even though last Friday I wanted to have you guys on, which technically speaking was the last Friday of the month. Maybe that's why it didn't work. Maybe that's why we weren't able to put the show together. But
can't go against the cosmic schedule.
Yeah, so here we are. We're back with the Crimis again, and if you tuned in last week, you saw me for about 3 minutes before I hit the stop button and then wound up sleeping for 15 hours on that day. So it's great to have you back. We've been doing this now for a couple of years on the first Friday, and each week there's something different to talk about it. But it feels like we've entered into kind of a different zone, a different territory where things are feeling like there's a lot more gravitas to so-called reality. And at the same time, there's a lot less grounding us to this so-called reality as well. Everything from the Castle Rock video that you and I have looked at to any number of things. And by the way, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I saw a piece of video with Jake the bull shaman, the Q shaman, that I had never seen before. And it was a piece of video where he was leading a prayer inside of the Senate. Have you seen that video?
Sounds familiar.
Wow. There was a lot more going on there than
I may have.
No, what kind of first, hello Robert. Hi Chris.
Hi,
and hi everybody. No, I haven't seen that one. What kind of prayer was it?
Was there a Capitol police officer present?
I'm sure there was, whatever those guys were. I mean, there's so much high strange.
I may have seen it
around. Okay, there are two events taking place, and I'm not sure that they were taking place at the same time. So there's the event that happens kind of at the entrance that's barricaded, and there's a really great video that I think I shared that with you guys this morning, right? That 21-minute video. So there's a really great 21-minute video where this guy breaks everything down in a way that really makes sense and kind of clarifies what's going on there. It's completely staged. The whole thing is staged. And then there's the event that happens with Jake Angeli, the bull shaman, which is in the Senate chambers. So there are these two kind of simultaneous. I'm not sure they're simultaneous, by the way. I'm not completely convinced that all of that even happened on the same day. That's another angle to look at this thing from. Yep. By the way, welcome Chatlandia. I wanted to just say hi to you guys and everybody else that's watching this live stream. And I want to just at the beginning of the show, just say, hey, appreciate y'all and appreciate you guys being here today as well. And so does Rosie. Look at that. We got a Rosie sighting
Rosie,
today.
I knew it was you right away, Rosie, because Jasper doesn't sound like that.
Jasper was on the bed when I walked out here.
Yeah.
I said, hey man, you gonna be on the show today? And he just kind of gave me the
I know.
I've seen them before.
Shanky's on the bed too in the sunshine. He likes to find a patch of sunshine on the bed.
Not today. So how are you guys doing?
Today we're good.
Today we're okay. Yeah, we have an odd week. Yeah,
down.
Wednesday we had a 30-foot trailer on our block slide down the ice and jackknife in front of our house, blocking the road for a while. And the person was obviously it's a place that at least I've been, obviously in my younger days, where you've spiraled down to this really low point and just things start falling apart one after another. And he gets out. So we watch. I get up in the morning. I'm not even just drinking my morning tea and look out the window and I say, Chris, this has bad news written all over it. And there's this truck and a 30-foot camper behind it.
Nice looking camper and a nice looking truck.
And it's sliding, and it's just, he's trying to get down the hill, and there's no place to go. It's a dead end. He can't even turn around at the end of our block, even if he knew where he was. And he comes up the driveway, so he can't move anymore. He comes up the driveway, and, so we go outside, and, obviously I'm just kind of like, all right, sizing him up. Is this person I want to let in my house? How much engagement do we want here? And we turn, and the thing just starts sliding. Goes sliding down the hill, and slow motion.
Like a Sam Peckinpah.
And jackknifes right in front of our house. And at which point, all right, we brought him in, helped him, gave him some eggs and toast and coffee, and kind of got him back on the planet. And Chris had some talks to him. Anyway, it was kind of our good day.
Took up our whole day.
Good deed for the year. But he was very grateful, sweet person, but definitely at one of those nadirs, that I think most of us have.
My girlfriend got me kicked out of the campsite because she brought these guys back to the trailer, to the camper, and they were making a big kerfuffle, and then we got kicked out of the campsite, and I was like, oh geez, this was just like.
So where were they in proximity to your house? Were they just up the road? And
no, our front yard, completely just smack dab in front of our house. And when I went out, he was walking up the driveway, and I went out to talk to him. I was still in my bathrobe, and was standing, and the wind was fierce, and it was so cold. And so he said, "Is your husband home? I need help. Does he know how to drive a trailer?" I'm like, no. So then Steve came out, and as we were standing there, we turned around, and the thing just started to slide all by itself and just jackknifed.
Wow.
And the poor guy, he just ran out. He ran down the driveway screaming, no.
We're like, no, it's too late. He's like, what is he going to do? Grab onto it?
That's all he has in the world. That's he's a turtle carrying his home on his back.
Because he had no phone and what happened.
And the girlfriend stole his phone and got them kicked out of the campsite. And it just sounded like a real kerfuffle.
It sounds like meth is involved somewhere in here.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, the girl said, actually, when I talked to him during the course of the day, I began to get this picture that she was actually dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
She sounded like she was dangerous.
Yeah, we're actually more afraid of her and her cohorts.
Yeah, and so he said that he spent the night just up the road here on this block, and then he was coming down to, find where to turn around and go back out. And that's when he started to slide. There was just this,
down.
Yeah. So it was.
So you were like his angels in that moment in some ways.
Chris,
you would say, yeah. I sat and talked to him for about an hour at the kitchen table and got his whole life story.
Well, that was really nice of you.
Well, yeah. I mean, he was kind of really sad, but sweet. How there are little tells with people.
Mm-hmm.
He got up and he put his plate in the sink and he washed it off. To me, that's like, okay. And that's interesting. He's not just leaving his dish on the kitchen table and walking away.
And when he called his mom, he sounded like he had actually a really nice relationship with her.
Yeah, so we've felt comfortable having him in the house.
Yeah, sounds like he should ditch Jezebel.
We had to talk about Jezebel.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, I think she's out of the picture. Hopefully,
we had to talk about. Yeah, boundaries.
we didn't come across her, but and also, right, and so then yesterday, our some work was being done somewhere. I don't know, but our water turned black.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if that's if that's a sign of black water coming into Providence or something like that.
You guys have had kind of an epic week.
In a way. Yeah.
And that, and
nothing bad.
Like I said before, both of us feel very drained, and I've got, I've been lucky. I've got a lot of, work to do, but boy, my energy is really hard to get it together. I think I take a nap every day this past week. I just didn't have enough energy to make it through the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I think, like we said, something's in the grid.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
So
I think
everybody's
they're getting ready to drop the mother of all false flags or mother of all psyops.
And then you can
Right.
feel it coming, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can. Yeah. I mean, if you want to, yeah, we can get to it because it's right. I mean, all the stages are being set. You know, the January 6th event
Mhm.
was a setup for that to turn everything that's gone wrong is being blamed on quote unquote patriots.
Right.
And it's turned into a witch hunt for patriots, and legislation. And of course, the what's his name, Grenier, who put in this op-ed in the New York Times. Guy who used to be the counterterrorism person under Bush.
Right.
Richard, is it? No, Robert Grenier, who was, you know, the CIA counterterrorism head under Bush, put in this big op-ed in the New York Times saying basically that the act, and the act is in Congress, I guess, it's the Patriot Act, but only turned inward. It's the inverse of it. So, basically, you or the three of us here and everyone listening to us, I would guess, are now going to be considered domestic terrorists on some form or another. And I think, you know, as to what you said, so the groundwork is laid for something that's going to turn all that against us.
So what are they going to do with like 80 million people who voted for President Trump?
Now you have to just
Are
get.
going to be targeted?
Well, they'll be targeted, but it's going to. It can do lots of things. If and that's the other part of what we want to talk about today. If this friggin' administration is real in any sense of the word, you know. Other than you know a bunch of you know signed statements by Jill Biden.
Well, there's certainly a lot to work with the, you know, the evidence that's presenting itself.
And then there is the weird interview yesterday with Alex Jones and Steve Pacinic.
We just listened to that at breakfast. It's like,
that thing. So
it's very strange.
If people aren't familiar with this, we talk about this stuff like, you know, it's just inside baseball for us, and for a lot of people it is, but for some people who don't know most people know who Alex Jones is, but Steve Pacinic has been on Alex Jones for about 14 years now, and Steve Pacinic has put Alex Jones into some compromising positions. Steve Pacinic was one of the people that got Alex Jones to think about and broadcast his views about Sandy Hook, which ultimately was the sort of the downfall of Alex Jones. It was the Sandy Hook stuff. And I'm not sure, I can't remember if he was also sort of driving the Pizzagate train, because Alex was on the Pizzagate train and Comet Ping Pong, and then he got caught in the sting. He got caught in the sting with that. I don't know if you guys were kind of watching him at that time, but there was another one of these weird events that happened at Comet Ping Pong Pizza, where this guy went there to supposedly shoot the place up.
From North Carolina. From
North Carolina. His father had, of course, military background, connected to the military, and the whole thing just seemed completely staged, utterly fabricated. And there just so happened to be a lawyer from New Jersey dining there with his family because he wanted to see what all the fuss with Comet Ping Pong was about. And that's the guy that shows up on InfoWars and basically tears Alex Jones apart because he was there. He's a lawyer. He's credible. And that period was kind of the beginning of this spiral downward and eventually leading to his deplatforming and being off of YouTube. So anyway, Steve Pacinic has been feeding Alex Jones information for a long time. And the last time he was on his show, he said that Biden was not going to get inaugurated. Now, technically speaking, he might actually be right because of the time that he was inaugurated. This gets into the whole high strange of everything. He's getting inaugurated not at high noon,
Right.
He's getting inaugurated at what 11:41 or something like that.
Yeah, like 20 minutes early, right?
Mhm.
So technically speaking, Trump is still the president. So, was Steve Pacinic right? Or was he not correct? And they basically have seized the White House just like they've seized the election. So that's what his premise was, and that there were going to be arrests. They were going to arrest the Pope. We'll talk about the Pope here in a little bit. And none of it really happened. What we've been witnessing is this theater, whatever this thing is. And he came back onto Alex Jones yesterday and was defending himself in his position. And Alex Jones, who has been mostly deferential to Steve Pacinic, really got on his case.
I thought he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
He nailed him down.
And he said, "Don't patronize me."
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And I've never seen him talk to Steve Pacinic like that before. And then at the end, Steve Pacinic reads this really weird poem. Did you guys see that? Did you see?
Yeah, it seemed like it was, from something years earlier.
It was
But
very
yes,
hard
it was
to
hard
hear.
to hear what the poem was about. But it sounded like it was about chaos.
It was about chaos, and it was about controlling the narrative. And then there's this weird kind of ending where he's talking about Lucifer at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That you must be able to, like, what was it? Hang your star or replace your star or hold your star in the sky or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing was very strange. And while he was reading the poem, and not very well, by the way, he was shaking. Did you see him shaking? His hands were shaking. Did you see that?
Didn't catch that.
I was in the other room, so I didn't have a visual.
So again, it's another layer of this kind of high strange that we're in. And Steve Pacinic is adamant that this is not going to work. They're going to be arrested. Trump is the rightful president. He's not just sitting there in Mar-a-Lago. He's doing this for a reason. And then Alex is saying, well, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? March 4th. And Pacinic says, I'm not going to put a timetable on this.
Which an argument could be made.
Right. Well, if it's real, you're not. But But you also have to remember who Pacinic is, and he's a CIA psychiatrist, and there's absolutely zero reason to ever trust. I mean, considering the role of psychiatry within the CIA, the mind control programs, going back to McGill University in the 50s, and on and on and on. I can't remember the guy's name at the moment. Who even they have the check stub for him when he was setting up something in Canada, Australia for the CIA. So somebody will remember his name.
Are you talking about Cameron Ewing?
Ewing? I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Ewing Cameron.
Right. Yeah. So, but anyway, you just know that some of the most horrific things that the CIA has ever done have been signed off on and designed by their psychiatrists.
That's right. Yeah.
And he admits to being part of
coups.
Ops.
I mean, that was his his life.
Well, that's what he claims. He claims that he was basically in the middle of all these really important events tied to the 20th century, Vietnam, the Paris Peace Accord, Camp David, the Camp David Peace Accord with Sadat and Carter and Begin. The fall of the Soviet Union.
And what did he say? Something about when 9/11 happened, and someone said to him, "Don't do a coup." Did you catch that?
No, I didn't catch that part.
He was talking to Alex Jones, and he was recounting the event, and he said something. I would have to go back and listen to it because first time I hear something, it doesn't really land in fully. I have to listen a couple of times, but.
He also was a ghostwriter or collaborator with about 3 Tom Clancy novels.
Yeah.
So he's got a background, obviously.
Tom Clancy, right? He didn't do Fahrenheit 9/411. What was that?
That was Ray Bradbury. It was Ray Bradbury.
Clancy's much more contemporary.
Okay.
Yeah. Clancy wrote like Red Dawn, not Red Dawn. Red October.
Hunt for Red October.
Hunt for Red October. He wrote all those, those Jack, what's his name?
Spy.
Jack. I'm not a huge fan of the genre.
No, it's not my genre either.
Yeah. So, but Steve Pacinic, I guess, lent him sort of his inside baseball. Tom Clancy, wasn't he connected with the Baltimore Orioles too? Wasn't he like supposed to be at one point in time going to be part of the ownership group?
Don't know about that.
Of the Baltimore. Yeah, I think Tom Clancy and George Will, like they were in position to, I think, buy the Orioles at one point in time. By the way, do you know the Cal Ripken story?
Recent one, no.
So since it's almost baseball season, as we creep towards whatever this spectacle of baseball is going to be. By the way, are they going to open your minor league park there? I don't
know. Haven't heard.
No, they keep on, trying to sell me T-shirts but I don't know that they are. At least I haven't said that they have a schedule yet.
What a shame.
It's great little park. Yeah, it's called McCormick Field, and it's famous for when Babe Ruth used to barnstorm with like a bunch of all-stars in the South during the winter. He was hospitalized for eating so many hot dogs that he had to have his stomach pumped in the local hospital here. So that happened at McCormick Field.
It's one of those very sweet fields that, like, the stadium itself is red brick, and it's quite pretty actually. They have a nice arcade in the front, like where you can buy food and that sort of thing.
I've been there. I went to the gift shop. I bought.
Really?
I bought Russell Wilson's baseball card because he played there. I think.
Played there, yeah. I don't
know
if he played for the Tourists or against. Anyway, the Asheville Tourists is the name.
No, he played for them. He played for them.
Yeah. All right, so we'd go like once a year. We get a couple of friends, and you just, and it's very family oriented. Between every inning, they have some kids race, wheelbarrow races, all that old fashioned kind of stuff.
Right.
It's very, very sweet.
Minor league baseball is like a family business, just like you mentioned it. It's like Main Street, and Major League Baseball is the Home Depot, the Walmart of that experience. The box lot, and just think about all the jobs that are connected with all these minor league baseball parks all around the country. They're just gone, totally gone. Major League Baseball gets to cut ties with all these affiliates. They don't have to pay these minor league salaries. They don't have to pay the coaches. So this is great. I think COVID has been great for Major League Baseball. It's done something they probably wanted to do for a long time, actually. But getting back to this Cal Ripken thing, so I was introduced to Bruce Jenkins, who was a writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, and a really nice guy. And one day, we were talking, and he brought up this Cal Ripken story, and it had to do with the fact that Cal Ripken was, of course, on his way to breaking the consecutive game streak, which was set by Lou Gehrig. And so Lou Gehrig, the Iron Man, and Cal Ripken is going to break his record. Well, just as he's approaching the finish line, there was a celebrity golf tournament somewhere around Baltimore, and it was during the season. And there were a number of actors that were there and other athletes from other sports. And one of them was Kevin Costner. And apparently, here's the rumor, Cal Ripken came home and found his wife in bed with Kevin Costner. And he wound up punching Kevin Costner out. And he hurt his wrist.
His hand.
So I think it was the day after he was supposed to play. It was a home game. And they mysteriously had a power outage at the stadium that day. And he didn't play. And then,
he canceled the game.
They canceled the game. It gave him about a day to heal and get his head together. And then the next game, I think he started, and he might have played 2 innings. It was sort of like, okay, let's just keep this thing going. And then, he was able to eventually, finish that streak and break Lou Gehrig's record. And so I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I went online and I just wanted to look at Cal Ripken's wife, and she looks like somebody that could do that. I hate to say it. I hate to say it, but she totally looks like somebody who would be a star fucker. And Kevin Costner, by the way, has that reputation. He has. So there you go. A little inside baseball.
Never a fan of Kevin Costner, but that story sounds like something that would have been in Ball 4, which is I think the first book I read as a kid that kind of opened my eyes to the reality of things.
Yep.
That there's been because I was a huge grew up. So I first started watching baseball '67, which would have been and just a big fan of Mickey Mantle's. And that's what, I would just basically watch just to watch his at bats. So 67, 68 is his last year.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then Ball 4 comes out maybe early 70s, maybe 70, 71. I'm not sure.
I think it was 1970 because I was 10 years old and I was reading Ball 4.
Okay. So I was 12 and reading it. So that would be the first time, my, the iconoclastic book for me to kind of wake me up. So it's interesting what gets you going. I never really thought of it that way, but really that'd been the first thing I ever read, that kind of said, well, things aren't exactly as they tell you. And, and the book, it's a great book, it's really, in the end, it's just a lot of drinking stories. But anyway, things have shifted, in fact, I was just realizing that I have no clue who's playing in the Super Bowl this weekend.
I'm not. Yeah, this is the 55th Super Bowl. I would not be surprised if it's the last. And it's between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And when Tom Brady was looking for a new team last year, he basically signed with the Buccaneers right when the True Node was, I think, at 1 cancer, and the Sabian symbol for the True Node at 0 cancer is on a ship at sea, a flag on a ship at sea. A ship at sea lowers one flag and raises another, which is the symbol for a false flag. That's number one.
Okay.
That's where they get it from, and also that's what pirates would do. Mm-hmm. Pirates would wave a flag from, let's say they saw, that's a French ship out there. Let's who gets along with France? Oh, the Portuguese do. Well, let's raise the Portuguese flag. And then they get really close and they wave at each other. And as soon as they get within cannon distance, up come the skull and bones. And then boom, go the cannons. So he became a buccaneer. He became a pirate.
Went from a patriot to a pirate.
From a patriot to a pirate.
Mm-hmm.
And what do the pirates do? They plunder things. They steal things like elections. Right. So, and then we have the Chiefs with Patty Mahomes, and the Chiefs won last year against the 49ers. And I think it's that they might be, although the Atlanta Braves have not changed their name. They have not changed their name. They're still the Braves, but the Cleveland Indians have changed their name. And the Washington Redskins have changed their name.
Yeah, I haven't heard the names that they changed it to, but it doesn't, like I said, I'm kind of abstracted from that at the moment.
But the Chiefs have not changed their name. So now you have sort of, again, this indigenous presence inside of the Super Bowl with the Buccaneer, the Pirateer, the Thieves, led by Tom Brady. And it's a classic kind of old versus young. Tom Brady's old. Pat Mahomes is young. Tom Brady's white. Pat Mahomes is black. And Tom Brady, a friend of Donald Trump. Pat Mahomes, very vocal and very vehement about Black Lives Matter. He's like a likable Kaepernick.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of narratives, a lot of storyline, and I could really give two shits.
Right.
About the whole thing.
Even though I hope that's not going to be the location of the FF, but
Yeah.
If I were doing one, it would be a good place. but I'm not for entertainment purposes.
Well,
only.
I think the false flag has to. I think it has to involve Biden. I think it has to involve Biden. I think Biden has to die. I think he has to die because number one, you get whoever this character is. Number one, you get the most intense emotional impact. Number two, they've been spending the last month essentially canonizing him. Like he could do no wrong. He's this wonderful father figure. He's gentle. He's kind. They've got halos behind him and all that shit. And then it would facilitate Kamala Harris becoming president very quickly. So I think it's got to involve Biden somehow.
Well, yeah. Well, it's going to involve a sacrifice. But Biden really is. I don't think he's going to get the emotional impact that something at another event, a large event, would have. If you want to, I mean, what's the whole point of it is going to be to blame it on some sort of patriot faction,
of course,
somebody inspired by Trump. That would be the only reason to do one at this point, to continue the trajectory that, began with Kennedy, but certainly got up to the next level at 9/11, and it was set up for on January 6th, and everything subsequent to that. So, we're just talking shit, but it just feels like that would be like the most emotional impact if you can get it attributed to the right place for them, which would be some patriot group, and then a full scale witch hunt begins, and then basically, if it's true that they are actually in power, then it's kind of game over for a long time. Chris disagrees with me.
I don't feel like they are. I don't know.
But they're what? That they're going to do it, or
that they're really in power.
Right. Well, that's the other question.
I just don't.
So I want to play this really brief snippet of the ceremony that this guy Jake Angeli did inside of the Senate building. I'm going to play this really briefly.
Is this the prayer?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have a small group of black ops agents. These guys will probably pop up later as some kind of crisis actor, some Muslim terrorists, or as agent provocateurs.
Dat het gaan veroorzaken. Zo werkt dat natuurlijk niet in Nederland. Dus het is een heel ingewikkeld fenomeen om ordeverstoorders, zeg maar preventief, om daar al op te acteren.
Premier Rutte heeft lof voor het politieoptreden van gisteren.
Let's listen to the message of Angel. It's all about one sentence.
Can you make it louder?
Spot it.
I can't, unfortunately. Hold on.
Message to all the tyrants, the communists, and the globalists that this is our nation, not theirs. Yes. That we will not allow the American way of the United States of America to go down. Thank you, divine, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent creator God, for filling this chamber with your white light of love, your white light of harmony. Thank you for filling this chamber with patriots that love you and that love Christ. Yes. Thank you, divine, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent creator God, for blessing each and every one of us here and now. Thank you, divine creator God, for surrounding and filling us with your divine, omnipresent white light of love and protection, peace and harmony. Thank you for allowing the United States of America to be reborn. Thank you for allowing us to get rid of the communists, the globalists, and the traitors within our government. We love you and we thank you. In Christ's holy name we pray. Amen.
How about that?
Wow. Well, yeah, that was typical Antifa overacting, wasn't it? Yeah. They wouldn't even make it on soaps.
So do you see that bullhorn that he had?
Mm-hmm.
He did not bring that in. That bullhorn was on the gavel when he arrived, because I watched him come in, and he strode in there like John Belushi at Animal House.
Mhm.
And
That's a good image.
and that bullhorn was there. It was already there. It was a stage prop waiting for him.
I just had such an aversion to him, and I've heard that there are good. Some people are saying that, well, maybe he's a good player, maybe it's not what it appears to be. But anytime anything came up about him, I had such an aversion to seeing him up there that I couldn't listen to it. So I may have missed a lot about who he is and what he's about. And I know that there were interviews subsequently. And some people said, well, listen, this, he sounds like a really nice person.
Oh, he sounds like he could be on my show. Like, he
just
sounds like somebody who could be a guest on my show. He was he with Carrie Cassidy? Wasn't he?
Maybe, yeah.
He was with Carrie Cassidy. He was with Laura Eisenhower. He was with some other guy. So
I just had a visceral reaction to him being up there with the bullhorn, with the horns on his head. It just like the whole thing really sickened me.
Yeah, I
agree. I don't feel like I have a grasp on who he is as a person, because that initial impact was so repulsive to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know what to think about him, but I don't know why they're holding him up in a good light. Does he deserve it? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I think he's I think he's complex in a lot of ways, because again, he kind of he talks the talk. He talks about free energy, and I mean,
they all do.
He could be, like I said, he could be a guest on the show, and I'm sure he'd have a lot of really interesting points that would be pretty resonant in a lot of ways. But then there's the other side of him that is really sketchy. Like, there's his moment with Rudy Giuliani when he's not in the bull suit. You've seen the picture where they're...
No, could you please talk about that? I don't know about that, because I avoided everything about him. So
let me see if I can find the picture. So here we go.
Huh?
Looks like it still upsets you that he was there.
Well, just thinking about it is yeah, I find it repulsive, actually, to see him up. It was so.
So there he is.
Oh, that's him. Okay.
Yeah, with
so what's that? When
Mr. 6 triple scotches a night, Rudy Giuliani.
Mm. So this is after the fact?
No, this is before.
Before. How so? How did that happen?
I don't know. I don't know how it happened.
Chaffee Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well, that's curious. No, I've not seen that. So that's him?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Jesus.
And then there's another photo with let me see if I can find it.
I remember when I was in my 20s and the what was the big scandal with Nixon,
Watergate.
And we took a trip to DC, and it was my first time being in the Capitol building. And I'm telling you, when I walked in there, it was like having a religious experience. And at the time, I thought to myself, how is it possible that you could be in a building this sacred and do anything illegal?
Mhm.
And that was in my innocent 20s. I couldn't reconcile in my mind. And I guess now I would say that architecture is built on sacred geometry, and it's built to elevate the spirit.
Absolutely.
And it should have an effect. So why are these people so inured to that effect? Why does it not uplift and uphold human dignity?
Well, I don't know. Maybe
Maybe
it's because there's a lot more going on in that town that has very little to do with human dignity and more to do with human desecration. This is Nancy Pelosi's son-in-law.
Right.
This is actually, if I'm not mistaken, before the event. And then this photo is quite interesting. Let me see if I can get a better shot of it. Maybe right here. So let's get a bigger image. Okay, so there's a guy here who is, and Emily was the one who pointed it out. So I think it's this guy. This guy is a pretty well-known white supremacist, and he comes out of Towson State.
I'm not seeing who you're pointing to.
Right here, this character.
You see it? Move your cursor. I can't.
Yeah, so I can find it. This guy right here.
Yeah, it's not coming up here. So
I don't see it.
Okay, hold on.
So
Or just give me directional.
Hold on. Can you see? It says the New Daily. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
It's this guy right here.
with the beard to his, as we're looking at him, to the left?
Yes.
Yellow shirt?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So this guy, his name is, let's see if I can find it again. Let's see. Hold on. Matthew Heimbach. Matthew Heimbach, who was a student at Towson State. And he fits the profile of a lot of these sort of white nationalist, stormtrooper types who tend to be agent provocateurs, like the people that put together the Charlottesville rally, who really put it together to be kind of like what we saw at the Capitol building. So that Matt Heimbach guy is actually in that photo, but nobody mentioned him, which is interesting. Like you would think that if they wanted to get a lot of mileage out of this,
right,
that they would mention him.
So is he embedded?
He's totally embedded. He's totally embedded. And a lot of these people, we're in this time of Gemini. A lot of these people play both sides.
Sure.
Why
not?
Yeah.
It's a paycheck.
Both sides. Yeah. So we're living in a very unusual time, obviously. I mean, not just unusual in the sense that we have all these sort of versions of a staged reality, but there's also, I think, something going on that's deeper, and that they want to flip reality, completely flip and invert reality. And everything that we're seeing, I think, is in service to that.
Mm-hmm.
And everything from shutting us down the mask ritual, the vaccines, which we haven't even talked about yet, and what I think is going to happen with the vaccines, the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab, splitting, becoming fractal, dividing, conquering. So we're in the midst of just a complete 180. I mean, I think that has a lot of people kind of very unnerved in a lot of ways.
Oh, it's whiplash.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Do you want to get into because reality is a linguistic event, and it's a chant. What we call reality, there's a couple of levels of it. There's what's called the external reality that's being broadcast through us, and then there's the internal reality of that's beneath all of that, and that's your spiritual part. But the rest of it is an overlay, and it's a linguistic event, and it's chanted into existence. It's chanted by the media, chanted continuously. Otherwise, as someone perspicaciously pointed out, that if you had not heard from anyone that there's some sort of pandemic going on, would you know, outside of the fact that you just dropped in here and just middle of the year and just walked, and all of a sudden no one is being killed off. People aren't dying all over the place that The only thing odd is that everywhere you go, people are wearing this shit over their face. But so the only way that reality exists is through the enchantment
and repetition,
media enchantment, and continuous repetition, and repetition by by theoretic authority figures and people who wouldn't believe the news otherwise, or still believe it left, right, and center. And I don't know if you want to just get quickly into the two Pope things, because I think it impinges on a couple of things that we're talking about, and I can just go very quickly. Is that all right?
Yeah. Do you want to incorporate the impenetrable mountain or any of the PDFs?
I'd like to finish that, because I'd like to finish with that, because that's that's really the end point of where this could all go in a good way.
And that's the solution, really, to know how to do
but
that.
Right now, as you're pointing out, we're not heading towards a solution. We're heading towards basically mythology everywhere we look, but not mythology, not in the ancient sense, but in the falsification sense. So we have elusive realities being generated for us all over the place, and they all may or may have varying degrees of adherence to things actually going on. But what I wanted to bring up is the fact that just look at my notes, because I need the dates and I didn't want to. So there was a time when there were two popes. It was called the Great Schism, and this took place from 1378 to, it's under the cap, 14.
He just sat on his notes.
1417. My research assistant here. So at the time, but what preceded that is that the papacy moved from Rome to Avignon through various power struggles. Against if the papacy at that time, especially, was families. You would get you would have you would become a cardinal. You would basically be a cardinal, have a concubine, and etc. It wasn't have children or have a family. The whole apostolic no sex thing was not even in the ball game back then. So. But they moved to Avignon, and so they moved to Avignon in 1309. But what happened in 1307, right? 1307 was when the Templars were arrested, right? And this would be a Clement of the Fifth, I believe, was the Pope. And he gives Philip the Fair sanction to arrest the Templars, and they arrest them in 1307. 1307. In 1309, the papacy moves to Avignon. So again, it's under the control of France. And so what was what was the taking of the in this period of time where the papacies in Avignon is called the Babylonian captivity. Plutarch came up with that term because it was the most debauched town on the planet at the time, and it was just considered just this horrific place as far as any morals go. So what happens then though? So then by 1314 is when they've tortured the Templars for 7 years, held him, and then as Jacques de Molay is being burned at the stake, he curses Philip the Fair and the Pope, supposedly to die within the year. Pope Clement dies within a month, and Philip the Fair does die by the end of the year. So they don't get to enjoy that for very long. But where I see this hooking in was that the Templar thing was a serious global monetary reset. It was a taking of the Templar lands, the taking down of the banking system that was really running a good part of Europe, running through the Middle East and into the Holy Land, and taking it down, and Philip the Fair and whatever banks that Philip the Fair owed the money to for his war efforts, becoming the de facto heads of all the monetary systems.
Right.
So I thought that was an interesting correlation into what's going on now. Now
He keeps sitting on Steve's notes.
I did from over here. Anyway, so that was one part. So then what happens later? So this from 1309 to 1378, it's in Avignon, and without getting into too many details, they decide to move back to Rome. But of course, the cardinals, two different sets of cardinals, set up to elect two different popes, and these popes subsequently end up living in Rome and in Avignon, respectively. And so that happens for about 40 years, from 1378 to 1417. And then eventually that kind of gets settled out. One guy dies, someone else. But what I take away, which was interesting, was like the first thing that happened with the two popes is that they excommunicated each other's followers. And excommunication back in those days was something much more serious.
That
if
cut
you were
off from everything,
Exactly.
socially, economically,
you
physically.
couldn't do business, you couldn't do anything. And if you look, Avignon and Rome are really not that far apart, though they're their respective control areas were kind of large. So this is what we're seeing right now, especially in terms of the Biden camp, whoever or whatever that is. We talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene being kind of an example of that, right? She's just been excommunicated from her House, from her congressional committees.
The committees, yeah. So she basically, the only thing she can do is vote now.
Right.
Amazing.
Right. So they took her off her committee positions, basically, and she's someone to even apparently she was, a 9/11 truther, and she supposedly recanted that.
So I think it was in the last 48 hours where she recanted that. She apologized for her involvement with Q. I mean, it was like, it was very reminiscent of when the Soviets would bring you into a room and get you to, force you to have a confession, even though you really didn't do anything wrong. And you would be doing something against your nature. And that's what they did. They forced her to essentially apologize, recant, and just like they did in the Soviet Union, you wouldn't be spared the gulag. You would still go. And that's exactly what happened to her. She wasn't spared.
She's in the gulag.
Yeah, she wasn't spared her punishment, which was having her membership removed from those committees. She's a Gemini, by the way.
Is she?
Yeah. So, that's another kind of part of this. I mean, they were demonstrating what happens to people in a Soviet style or communistic governance where you have to basically stand before a tribunal. She was standing before a tribunal, and they said, fuck you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I found a couple of interesting factoids about Pope Clement. And one is that he established relationships with China. Did you know that, Steve?
No, so that would have been around Marco Polo time, I guess.
Clement sent John of Monte Corvino to Beijing to preach in China. So we have a Chinese connection with.
No,
Pope
I didn't know
Clement.
that.
Well, I know that the Jesuits had a really big stronghold in Japan.
Well, this is very specific. This is China. This is Beijing.
Yeah.
The other thing that is very unusual. Do you know how he died?
Clement?
Yeah.
I forget. I did know, but I forget.
No.
Well, first of all, he dies on 4/20. Now, he's connected to Friday the 13th because that's when they go in and they storm the Templars and start to create all that mayhem with the Templars. Friday the 13th, which is why it's considered to be unlucky. So Clement dies on 4/20. So he's connected to these two very significant days. Now, according to account, while his body was lying in state, a thunderstorm arose during the night and lightning struck the church where his body lay, setting it on fire. The fire was so intense that by the time it was extinguished, the Pope's body had been all but destroyed. He was buried at the Collegiate Church in Uzesti, close to his birthplace in Viandro, as laid down in his will. So according to legend, he not only did he die, but he died at the hands of this supernatural event.
So what? You said after he died, he got zapped.
No, it says he died on April. It was during he was lying in state.
He's lying in state, so he's already dead.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a waste of a good lightning bolt.
So it doesn't really say how he is there lying in state or for how long, but
so Jacques de Molay is the one who cursed him and predicted his death. But as he's laying in state, he's struck by a lightning bolt.
Right.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, and if you ever look up the palace at Avignon is really massive. It's pretty spectacular. So that's still, to run it back to what's going on now, right? So you've got this full-fledged excommunication, and then they were talking about this, for months since at least since November, about what's to be done with anybody who supported President Trump in any way whatsoever, right? There's going to be a witch hunt. Laws passed. You're not allowed to work in D.C. anymore, and
even the National Guard was vetted.
Yeah, right. Well,
where their loyalties lie.
Right, and then you've got this new head of the Defense Department, Austin.
Lloyd Austin.
Right?
Yep.
Lloyd Austin, right? Who's Council of Foreign Relations, etc., and was on the board of Raytheon
for 8 years.
Yeah. So he's kind of we know what he's there for.
And you can't help but remember that Trump actually made a public statement about going after the military-industrial complex. So didn't make any friends there, did he?
Right. So he's doing this 60-day, and there's not clarity exactly what that is, military stand down in order to vet the military. which we
This
saw.
is serious.
Which we saw at DC, where they think they got rid of like 20 National Guards, guardsmen,
Yep.
guardswomen, something like that, for vetting them for, again, this goes back to, to being, to this new Patriot Act, whereas anything is going to be it's about domestic terrorism. And as you've stated, and as we all know, which is blatantly obvious to anybody with half a friggin' brain, that, the cities were blowing up, but those weren't domestic terrorists. Kamala Harris thought they were really, really good and righteous and doing things like that. So nobody blinks an eye. So that leads us to, so this is why on the other Gemini side flip, because we're looking at Gemini, the other Gemini flip of what's going on is this narrative that Trump is still in power or the military's in power at the moment. Trump is sort of on the sidelines,
quiet,
letting things play out so that we can see every bad actor. And and you and I know we've known these guys are all bad actors, and it is more out in the open than ever now. But the question is, what good does that do? But this is what people are left with, because they have some sort of hope that this sort of thing is going on, because what are they left with? They're left with this sort of, abject horror show, this technocratic takeover, this
2030.
AI 2030 agenda, this AI shit show, this vaccine that's already, already this shit is in us. That's going to hook up to the technocracy and the necrosis. How do you say death?
Necroscopy? I don't know.
I'm thinking
Necromancy.
I'm trying to hook up necromancy and technocracy on the run.
Oh.
Necrotechnocracy. Let's try that. My neologisms are at an ebb at the moment. So people are really, caught. They're caught into this place where you don't, you want to have some sort of hope that there's some sort of good outcome out of all this.
Yes.
That
sure do.
That somehow, we're not facing, 100 years.
Well, I do have to agree with the people who say, just character-wise, it doesn't make any sense that President Trump would just go away quietly into the night. It's just totally out of character. And there hasn't been much coming out of Mar-a-Lago about his statements or anything, except something superficial. So, it just seems to make some kind of sense to me that, and I'm sorry, I think the guy is brilliant. I think he is a stable genius. I happen to really like Donald Trump. A lot of people are on the fence about him, but I really feel like there's been no one else who stood up for the American people like he has. I really believe that. I think that I've never seen anything like it where he would take a bullet for the American people. So
I'm somewhere in the middle with that.
I know.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle, because I'm not sure if he would have taken a bullet for the American people. Like, first of all, there's this idea that he was compromised, and that they said that they said, look, we're gonna nuke some American cities if you just don't roll over and lay down, or we're gonna ruin your kids and your grandkids, and we're gonna but you don't run for president and take that kind of position, an overly aggressive position that he took without knowing that, right? I mean, theoretically, you would think that he would have some understanding of that. Like, I know what the risk is here. I know what the risk is, and I'm willing to risk my family and our legacy, as a sacrifice for the American people. And I don't get the sense, at least now, that he has been capable of doing that. That said, he took a huge amount of abuse, and he took a huge amount of psychic, like really intense negative psychic energy, like nobody I've ever seen.
Do not know how he's still standing, honestly.
Like nobody. So, was he able to somehow become this, scapegoat, I guess, in some ways, this almost, I don't know, kind of quasi Christ-like figure, was he taking things on in a different kind of way? I mean, there's a lot of, I think, unanswered questions about this presidency, a lot of them. And historically, I'm sorry, and maybe he didn't have much of a choice in some ways, because when I look back on how this whole COVID thing unfolded, he tried to soft sell it the best way he could. Early on, you could tell he was soft selling it. Like, well, once the sun comes out and spring is here, it'll get better. Oh, what about hydroxychloroquine? And he started to really pump that. And I think he was getting really bad advice, obviously. And he has been getting bad advice from a lot of different people. And I think that they were telling him, hey, look, you gotta kind of roll with this thing. Do your best to support Fauci and Birx. And within 30 days, this thing will be over if we do it right. I mean, maybe he ultimately kind of went down that path, but that was his downfall.
I agree. I think if for him, you can't reach that point and then compromise, because you can't make deals with these people, with these, or whatever they are.
Yeah.
Right. You would have to go full bore, and this is it. That's the only thing that would have, worked in a lot of ways. So like you said, a lot of unanswered questions.
There are a lot,
but he's the closest thing to anything real we've had, in a very long time.
I've always said Donald Trump will tell you the truth. He will tell the truth. On a lot of these matters, he is actually telling the truth, which a lot of other presidents, most of whom never did. Never. And were there also, like when he said, oh yeah, when 9/11 happened, there were the dancing Arabs. No, they weren't dancing Arabs. They were actually dancing Israelis. Okay. But, so he'll do stuff like that. Like he'll say certain things that aren't really completely truthful. And then he'll say things that are actually quite truthful. And then there are certain things he'll say that are not truthful at all. But put it all together, he still broadcast more truth than.
When I look at the beneficial things he did, I think that I am very deeply impressed. I think that, for me, the overarching issue that trumps everything else is the pedophilia and the satanic ritual abuse, and how he went after the pedophiles. Because you've got that as a standalone just for the children and all the other people who were victimized. So there's a standalone on that. But then in conjunction with that, it's the linchpin that makes everything else work, as far as the darkness of what we're experiencing. Without that, they can't function. That's their cash cow. Human lives. That's their cash cow. So you've got a double header there. For when you go after that, then that pulls the rope on everything else, and the whole sweater unravels if you go after the pedophilia and the human trafficking. And that's what he did. And when I think about it, and when I look at that dark cesspool of black goo, And I think, if that's what you're going up against, what do you expect? What do you think is going to happen? Those people, they never give up. They never forget. They never let you go. They will chase you down to the ends of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And they will pull every dirty trick that they can conjure up. And it is a conjuring. So that's where I come from. And I think if he never did one more good thing by saving the children, he saves the planet. So, and then I can cut him a pass on the other things. Sure, I don't like certain things like you. I see the negativities, and I see. Oh,
well,
gosh.
I mean, yeah, we're into like
that's the whole enchilada.
But everything like then flips right now, because now we've got Rachel Levine as the Secretary of Health, who's transgender.
Oh, please don't even get me started.
And will now promote. Now we'll promote transgender ideology and biology from basically the day you're born to the day you die, right? So,
sure.
He may have saved the children, but now we have somebody who wants to do something exactly opposite with your children. So,
absolutely.
And this is kind of where we are now with everything. Everything gets kind of flipped and inverted inverted. I just think it would have been better. I don't know. There's just so many things about like the people around him, his cabinet, the fact that there was never any purging of former Obama staffers inside the White House. I mean, it's like
politics 101. I know.
It was like programmed to fail in a lot of ways. So I still think that there is enough potential chaos magic in the air where whatever plans these people have in order to turn our lives into a living hell on this planet will be scuttled, because there's too much chaos to be actually managed and then turned into a kind of dark alternate universe. So, and that, by the way, in my estimation, doesn't have anything to do with Trump. And he may have initiated it. He may have started it. He may have created the sort of the tableau, but I'm not attached to any kind of an outcome on March 4th or
I'm way attached to an outcome.
If it happens, great. I'm like, okay, great. But then you have to realize that when that happens, then we're going to get that flip again. We're going to get that inversion, and then we're going to have to deal with something else as a result of that, which is, hey, that's just the way it is.
Can you flesh that out a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
Well, just like you just said, that, one of the great things that he did was stopping the pedophilia, the trafficking, right? But he's not there now. And now we have Rachel Levine, who is going to basically rule over your children's biology from the day that they're born for at least the next 4 years, maybe more, who knows, right? So this is what I'm talking about. We're in this time in this cycle where things are flipping very, very quickly. And so let's just say, for instance, he does somehow reclaim the White House. One of the two popes comes back into power. Right. That's not going to be a panacea, and that's not going to be the happy ending of the fairy tale, because quickly
be the beginning of the end of the fairy tale.
We'll have another layer and level of that inversion that will take place, and we'll have to deal with that. This is going to go on, I think, through this nodal cycle with Gemini and Sagittarius, and I think we'll finally see some resolution about a year from now when the nodes flip into Taurus, Scorpio, because they're fixed signs. Mm-hmm. And with Taurus, we're dealing with terra firma, we're dealing with the earth, we're dealing with third dimensional reality. Scorpio, the hidden motive, hidden power, all that gets exposed.
I think the way back out of this has to be bumpy. It's so entangled, and it's so dark, and it's so convoluted. How could it not be like
Right.
lurching back and forth between, oh my God, it's good, and oh my God, it's bad. And
But the thing that bothers me, or it doesn't really bother me, but it's like, look at the Nobel Peace Prize. You've got Black Lives Matter and Jared Kushner nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
And
Where do we relate in any of those categories with those two bastions of
I don't know what to say.
of humanity, right? Humanity's
I think
finest.
that whole committee should just go out into the sunset. They have completely.
Yeah, I mean, that's, those are all
Completely.
political prizes, like Man of the Year. The Literature Prize has nothing to do with literature anymore. It's, finding some like transgender Somalian writer who, put 3 poems in a paper and giving them the prize.
Yeah,
It's all
I think
political
they've
now.
completely undermined any
Nothing
ideal
against
that they
transgender
started on.
Somalian writers, by the way.
Right.
I'd publish one in a heartbeat.
You hear that, cancel culture, people?
So
well, the other side that Trump has brought is again, and this is run through Q to a great deal, but not just through Q, because there are a lot of people bounced off that. Was this? So many people have a better idea of what's going on, what the swamp is like,
I would agree
what
with
the
that.
deal is.
Yep.
And our we're running out of friends this town, but
I wouldn't even go there.
what talk about our
What?
our UPS?
No, I wouldn't even.
Well, we got somebody who delivers stuff to our house, and he's great, and he may even be watching the show now, in his truck. So, but this is what's happening. So to counterbalance this really small, contrived falsity run through the media, run through whatever Castle Rock Productions that passes for a White House these days. I mean, who knows? There are, who knows what percentage of people voted for Trump in actuality? 60, 65, 70? I hear all sorts of numbers. That's a really strong spirit that is going to be, in the end, it's going to be tough to overturn, or it would be enough to split this country in reality, and I've already told you Austin's going to be the new capital of the Free States of America, or whatever it's going to be called.
Mm-hmm.
And
we have Lloyd Austin as Secretary of Defense, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So should we?
Right, that's right.
Should we talk about the impenetrable mountain?
So one of the things I just want to, before you go there, I think one of the things that I think we can maybe extract from this is to kind of take ourselves out of a place of judgment or a place of putting a label on something, right? Suspending some level of belief or disbelief. Maybe that's really the kind of the yoga that we need to have for this time, because I think if we could do that, then we may have more perspective, and which is a very kind of Aquarian thing.
And you do know that the word yoga means union.
Yeah.
Yeah, zygote is one of its correlates.
So
and that's go ahead, finish.
And it reminds me of that line from The Second Coming, where Yeats writes, in the end, the worst are filled with passion and intensity, while the best lack all conviction. I mean, that to me feels like kind of where I'm at in some ways. Like, I'm willing to step back and sort of suspend a few things right now, because there's so much happening. And if you try to go into one vector or one position, it'll flip. I feel like we're in this constant flipping now. Sure, and the way to sort of get out of that kind of polarity and duality is to just step back a bit. Right. Yeah.
Be dispassionate.
Yeah. In the world, not of it. Our yoga teacher used to say 100% attached, 100% detached.
Right, because that's the other part of it. Because you don't want to go too far, because now all of a sudden you're just kind of in this existential, sort of space, this existential zone where nothing matters. You're border on being blackpilled, and I don't think that's actually a really good. That's not a really good outcome.
So
No,
to be, educate yourself and be aware of what's happening, but not engage emotionally and be subject to the winds of change, to hold steady in the middle.
Right.
Right. And because I've had to give up on thinking that I know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely had to pull back from that.
Mm-hmm.
But can I tell the Nasruddin story?
Oh, please.
You know who Nasruddin is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So Nasruddin is this sort of a Turkish, Middle Eastern trickster. Very Gemini, very Hermes-like. Anyway, there's hundreds and hundreds of tales about him, and this is one I feel like applies to this time. That you have how you make yogurt. You put some yogurt into milk and let it sit for a certain temperature for overnight or something like that, and it turns to yogurt. All right. So Nasruddin one day is sitting by his lake, huge lake, and some people see him, and he's there putting a spoonful of yogurt into the lake. And the people come up to him and they say, "You fool, what are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm making yogurt." And they say, "Well, you can't make yogurt by putting into a lake." And he says, "Yeah, but what if it takes?" So I'm in the what if it takes stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What if the spiritual makes a comeback and takes,
Mm-hmm.
because we've been living in the anti-spiritual for a very, very long time.
Our whole lives.
So, yeah.
Anything else you wanted to wrap up before we move on to the impenetrable mountain?
No, I think we're good. Why don't we delve into the impenetrable mountain? Let's try to penetrate it. Yeah.
Did you want to read it, or do you want to just talk about it?
Let me read it.
I don't know where you. So this is from Peter Kingsley's book, A Story Waiting to Meet You. Is the last story waiting to pierce you. Thank you.
Which is a really good book, actually.
It's a wonderful book, and it's about the shamanic creation of the Western civilization, told through this meeting of Abaris and Pythagoras back at the dawn of Western civilization.
All right.
So Chris is going to probably read
I wonder
from
if we go to the next page.
He's going to read from the next page.
There is an ancient myth from Central Asia that describes how civilizations are born. It was known to the early Avars, to the distant ancestors of Tibetans as well as Mongols. This is the myth of the impenetrable mountains. The people are completely stuck, cornered, hemmed in. The path ahead lies blocked by insurmountable obstacles rising in front of and all around them. There is no way forward, no hope. And then the impossible happens. In one version, a wild wolf finds them, feels compassion, shows them how to bore a hole through the solid rock into what will become their future. In another, the mysterious shaman shoots an arrow straight through the impenetrable mountains, creating what would come to be known as the arrow path. You could hardly think of a more straightforward myth, but it happens to contain the secret we in the West, with all our complications, have forgotten. A new civilization, any civilization, including ours, is not only a miraculous gift, it always comes into existence out of the impossible. And the impossible is impossible. is absolutely non-negotiable. But however simple that may sound, nothing can be more essential for us to understand. The world we now live in is a world of infinite possibilities, which is why it has no future. And there is no point in trying to kid ourselves that we know what the impossible is, because even the things we like to think of as impossible are simply the possibilities we decided to put aside. The problem is that the possibilities are nothing but finely modified, recalibrated versions of the old. The same recycling of the same. And they swallow whatever energy we have left, devour our intelligence, gobble our hopes and aspirations, cheat us of time until we no longer remember what life is about. As we are, we will never, not in 1,000 years, not in our wildest dreams, find our way into the future. We are trapped on every side by possibilities. And here's where this story comes in. Nothing could seem more insubstantial or insignificant than such an inconceivably impossible story, waving and rippling like gossamer ahead of the wind, except for the fact that it will outlast you and me and the whole world we live in. And although we may appear to have arrived at the end of this little incantation, there really is no end to it at all, any more than there is an end to the joy of being present with those who watch over and give birth to worlds. And the point of life is to follow that presence wherever it leads, never to let it out of your sight, not to look aside, even for a moment, to the right or left. And once you hold it in your hand or inside your body, never to let it go until the time is right.
So this is from a book that you guys have on your press, right?
No.
No.
No,
Oh.
this was from Peter Kingsley wrote this book, and it's put out around the time we were working with him, probably 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But you have other works by him on your.
No,
we
we
never published any of Peter's works.
Oh,
no.
well, I thought you did.
No, you're thinking of Peter Lamborn Wilson, maybe.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, that's what you're thinking of.
You know.
Where is the book? Anyway, I could
His
show it.
book,
Is it on the shelf?
it might be on my desk.
Okay, I'll go look for it.
But yeah, so it's I think it's important. So the thing about the future, because what we are is a war. It's a battle of various wills being impinged on our future.
Mm-hmm.
All right, whether it's a technocratic future, whether it's a freedom future, whether it's some glorious constitutional future,
Mm-hmm.
right? And and we all have our preferences, and these are all potentialities. The point of the story, to go into the real future, if you buy the fact that the West is a culture that began, say, our particular culture began with the Pythagorean era around 600 BC, 500 BC, and it's following its arc. And whatever's next is nothing that we can imagine. Just like whoever was before that could not have imagined this particular culture.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But what we're trying to do, everybody from Greta Thunberg to Daniel Pinchbeck to everybody, they all are trying to shape the future from the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's all different. So this is so one of the things that's being saying there is that this wall is all the possibilities of the past standing in front of us that we can't break through and get beyond, because but we're hemmed in by it. one of the ways to be able to penetrate it, to let the vector come in from the outside, is to enter a sort of state of what's called hopelessness. And I thought that I had reached the state of hopelessness with Obama, or at least for me, I did. I had, at that point, I realized that there is no hope from this structure to continue. Now, what's going to come of this? The only thing that we can hold to is what he's calling here the presence, and that's the presence within us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're holding to that, which is continuously alive, this future will be allowed to happen and take care of itself. Otherwise, we're just going to regurgitate. We're just going to regurgitate what's been going on over and over and over again. And I think that's where it's at. So I think that's where the importance is. And one of the things that Kingsley also talks about is, and this goes back to like Göbekli Tepe, which is supposedly a temple for the Watchers.
Mm-hmm.
And his contention is that the Watchers are a certain attention that's needed to bring civilizations into being and also to close them.
Find it.
Okay.
That's right.
So I feel that it's really important to look at that as kind of an end game when you're getting caught up into this should happen, that should happen, and I do it all the time. Obviously, I want, I obviously have my preferences, but in reality, if I and we can hold on to the presence in the present, the presence of the divine within us, we can, the rest of it will hopefully,
Take
I
care
don't
of
know, drop
itself.
away. Talk about, it says a wolf comes in. It's interesting. I got up when I couldn't sleep one night. I got up at very early, first break of light, and I walk up. I just walk out onto the deck in the front, and this coyote comes walking down the street. Just like, at first I thought it was a dog, but then I realized it was a coyote, and they saw me and started doing a little slink and then walked down the block. And I was reading the Argonautica, which is the story of Jason and the Argonauts. And I went down to lie down and read for a while. And the paragraph I open up to talks about the wolf dawn. That the first light of the day is called the wolf,
Mm-hmm.
the wolf dawn, which I thought was really interesting and obviously an interesting synchronicity. But I think that's it. So it's like what we need is that wolf dawn of something new, and we don't get to it through our will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. The wolf is such an interesting symbol because
Mm-hmm.
it's often painted as being predatory.
Mm-hmm.
Wolf in sheep's clothing and Little Red Riding Hood, and so the wolf, to me, in that story, is basically making an ally with the predator, right? The predator becomes the ally in that story, and that's a very interesting relationship. With the wolf actually handing over this tool. It says, look, I'm giving you a tool to bore right through this thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that there is something in there about either understanding the predator or making an ally of the predator. And the predator at that point becomes your god. It becomes this this not a merchant, but somebody, an entity that provides you with the tools to get through something that is seemingly impenetrable. So, and there's the story of the two wolves that live inside of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Native American story.
Yeah. So.
And the founding of Rome, wasn't it?
Romulus.
Well,
they were suckled by wolves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Two wolves, right?
Yeah.
Gemini again.
Uh-huh.
And
wolves.
The thing is, you can never really know what it's going to be that's going to make the change.
Right.
But you have to be present to witness. I think, and the witnessing seems to be key. So to be awake and aware and fully present in your witnessing seems to be a very necessary component of the change and what change it is that comes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I was advocating suspending some level of belief and disbelief, because
Right.
at the same time, and I was thinking about it after I said it,
I'm still attached.
at the same time, I think it's very clear that we're also in a really high stress spiritual conflict. Like, we're in a spiritual war at the same time. So also to be aware of that simultaneously as well, right?
Which also in the yoga system is called tapas, T-A-P-A-S. And the practice of tapas is to bear extremes with equanimity.
Mm-hmm.
So the word tapas means heat. So the heat is turned way up.
Friction,
heat. And so when you're doing the practice of tapas, you know that you're in the situation, you know you're in an uncomfortable place, a painful place, but you bear that extreme with equanimity. So no highs, no lows, and the best way you can do that is to relinquish, let go, let go, let go.
conscious suffering.
Mm-hmm. That would be
That's a practice, conscious, because there's plenty of suffering to go around anyway, but
and not to
conscious
claim it
suffering
as
is a
my
practice.
suffering. It's just suffering.
Speaking of suffering,
pain.
Snake Jones cut his finger off, and there's been he's in our chat. He's a pretty regular participant in Chatlandia today, just right now. He's been talking.
Now?
Yeah, they've been talking about his finger getting reattached for most of the show.
Whoa.
So,
well,
that's where allopathic medicine rises to brilliance.
Yeah,
and that sort of thing. So I hope that
but
goes
isn't
really
that
well.
something that's an initiatory.
when you go back and maybe watch us, read some of the comments, because he's actually giving real-time commentary about his finger being cut off. It's kind of, I don't know. I've just been, I move between worlds here, right? I've got one eye over here and then two eyes over here.
Well, Snake, we'll light a candle for you.
Yeah, pretty crazy, huh?
Wow.
Yes, and we hope that he is remembered.
Yes.
Remembered. Yeah, here you go. Yeah, do you know the story about Ronnie Lott, who played with the San Francisco 49ers? By far the most, I would say, the most worthy of being a true gladiator in the sense of the word in the history of pro football. Ronnie Lott, one game, got hit in his pinky, and it was like so bad that it was kind of hanging off. And they said, look, if you have to get this reset, you're going to be out of the game, and you may be out for a couple of weeks, or we could just clip the tip of it off. And he said, clip it off.
Oh, good.
This is in the middle of a game, and he gets the tip of his pinky clipped off so he can go back in and play.
That's tapas.
Ronnie was something else. Now, after the fact, he's kind of regretted that, I think. But it's one of those stories that creates a legend and a mythology around it.
Similar, but not quite. When I was 17, I saw Black Sabbath with Aerosmith opening up for them.
Oh, Tony Iommi
at Madison Square Garden. Yeah, it was a very famous show, and it was the most debauched crowd I was ever in. It was vomit everywhere. It was horrible. But Aerosmith was like just an up and coming Boston band at the time, so it was about 70, 75 maybe, and somebody from the rafters throws a bottle down and hits Tony Iommi, the guitarist, in his hand, and it gets all cut up, and he goes off stage for about 20 minutes. They stitch him up. He comes out, and they play their legally required 45 minutes
Mhm.
and 1 second maybe, and just walk off and get the hell out of there.
Mm.
So anyway, so heroic guitarist.
Well, and he was a guy that wasn't playing with a full set of fingers anyway.
Really?
I don't know about him. I know Garcia has one missing.
No, Tony Iommi, I think, had parts of 2 fingers missing already.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that kind
He
of
was used to it.
that influenced his playing style, like the classic Black Sabbath
Mm-hmm.
heavy riffs was a byproduct of his inability to use all of his fingers.
Okay, so it was on his cording hand, huh?
Mhm,
On his
yeah.
left hand.
So it's
Okay.
interesting that he would have another kind of event happen with his fingers.
Yeah, I don't remember which hand it was. I'd have to look. I was, my seat wasn't too close to see it, but you kind of saw what happened. Anyway, yeah, that was a bad night in a lot of ways, as I recall. But I've been I'm enjoying a lot of listening to a lot of Steve Howe lately. He's an underrated great guitarist.
Wow, way underrated.
I just picked up Fragile and the one with Roundabout on it. Anyway, I was listening to his take on Paul Simon's America.
Oh yeah, it goes from like country twang to funk to, it's incredible.
What a tour de force that's guitar work on that song is.
Yeah, yeah. And he had such an unusual style. He played the guitar up high. It was he wasn't one of these guys that was like a gunslinger, had it down around his waist.
Yeah, like Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
Yeah, he liked to wear his guitar nice and low.
Yeah, right.
Like Chuck Berry had with his little Maybelline walks and things like that. He had to have it slung low for that.
Yeah, no, Howe is very underrated. In fact, the whole band is incredible. Bill Bruford on drums, some monster drummer. Those are
he's Bill Brewer, he's still with the revamped King Crimson, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He's incredible, and there are 2 Wakeman solos on Fragile and on Close to the Edge that are the flat out best. I guess it's whether it's a Hammond organ or something like that he's playing. It's just it's just astonishing stuff. Yeah. So the talent. I was just talking to Chris yesterday or something like that. The talent level, 70, 72, 71. That time was just incredible. I mean,
giants. I mean, incredible.
These are kids, 24, 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Playing intricate. I mean, as intricate as Beethoven.
Absolutely. Go back and watch early Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those guys were just insanely talented, doing all these like crazy time signature changes and minor chords. It's just incredible. It's like, man, just the rich, creative, fertile, field that was around during that time. And it wasn't just music. It was in cinema. Mm-hmm. It was, the 70s were an incredible time for art. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that you're dealing with baby boomers who had Pluto in Leo. And during the 70s, that's when Neptune was in Sagittarius. So there was that Neptune-Pluto trine going on and a lot of really high inspiration in terms of creativity. And the boomers, by and large,
really contributed quite a bit to that opening.
I think so. That's very Neptunian, right? Mm-hmm. And then and a lot of the big drug stuff, I think, happens in the 60s. Like that's Neptune and Scorpio, and we're sort of drenched with, narcosis and altered states, and but it winds up being kind of a dark version of that. How the summer of love goes from LSD to methamphetamine and heroin. Actually, Coke was not that popular in the 70s. 70s. Yeah, well, in the 70s, it was really methamphetamine. It was a hard street drug and really prevalent in San Francisco. And it became very, very, of course, cocaine, it snows cocaine in the 80s. That's when cocaine hits the mainstream and the middle class. And but the 70s are incredible, totally incredible. And some of the best cinema happens in the 1970s. I think there's a lot of really good small documentaries on YouTube about Apocalypse Now. If you want to understand the 70s, Apocalypse Now is like the apotheosis of the 70s. It embraces everything that the 70s has to offer.
What was the documentary about it?
Hearts of Darkness.
Hearts of Darkness. Yeah, that was great.
That was actually shot by his wife, Eleanor.
Right.
Coppola.
I still remember, popping into the theater to see that. It was just mind blowing.
I couldn't watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Chris's first husband
was a Vietnam vet who was severely damaged psychologically,
Mm-hmm.
and I could not watch anything connected with that war. And I think they had to drag me to the war memorial in Washington.
Right.
I went kicking and screaming. I didn't want to even.
The backstories of Apocalypse Now are phenomenal.
Mhm.
So the character played by Martin Sheen, that character they had already cast and shot a number of scenes was Harvey Keitel, and it just didn't work. So they had to actually fire Harvey Keitel in almost a quarter of the way through the film, and then they brought Martin Sheen in because he was at the Cassandra Crossing. And by the way, Martin Sheen is also missing part of his finger. This is a weird theme. The finger theme is weird.
Wesley, he's got something wrong with his shoulders too, right?
Yeah,
So
one arm is shorter than the other. That's what it is.
So he puts his jacket on in a strange way.
Yeah.
If you watch West Wing, he was always like
he would twirl it around
to put his jacket on.
One arm is shorter than the other.
Me too.
But there's that scene where in the beginning where he's in that hotel in Saigon, and of course, everybody knows that he's really drunk. I mean, that he was totally shit-faced for that scene, but it was more than that. Like he was going through like this heavy spiritual crisis. He was confronting his alcoholism. I think there's probably some level of adultery involved in his life at that time. And what you're watching is this like purgation of this guy's soul.
It's real. It's real. He actually punches that window.
The window, bloodies his hand.
That blood is real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's astonishing.
Yeah. And I've seen some documentary footage around this, and Eleanor Coppola says that Francis and another person on the crew sat with him in that room for like 2.5 hours after they finished shooting that scene. And they did, once they got rolling, they just did it in one take. And because most of the scene happens in terms of voiceover, Coppola's kind of sitting on a ladder off to the side, and he's coaching him. He's telling him, feel it, get into it, don't stop. And he had to kind of come to terms with the fact that it was kind of his voice which leads him to smashing that mirror. And they thought that he might lose his hand as a result of that. So he had to like, balance that out. And they said, to me, that's the 70s. It's the director is God, this, this titanic creative force, kind of working out this Orson Welles-like sort of legacy in some ways. And anyway, I think the 70s were a major milestone in creativity, because when the 80s kick in, you begin to see the influence of computer generated graphics, electronically generated music, and they're not good, right? The early graphics of the 80s, the early computer effects of the 80s kind of suck.
Yeah, the drums from the 80s just ruin all. I can't listen to songs for most songs with those drums that they use, the early drum machines.
Yeah.
I would agree. It was also, we just, two things. One, we just watched the Jason and the Argonauts with the Harryhausen,
right. That was
which was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And also a more recent Coppola film, which was based on a novel by
a man named Greer.
No, Mircea Eliade. That I didn't know he wrote novels.
You get
But he
my
wrote a
joke.
novel. What's that?
You didn't laugh at my joke.
A man.
Based on a novel by a man named Greer. It's a line from a song.
It's a line from based on a novel. Okay, man named. Because I didn't get it because that's from the Beatles.
So what?
Based on because it's Lear. That's why I didn't. Get it.
Lear. Okay.
Sorry.
I got it wrong.
Sorry.
Sorry.
But a great try though.
Thank
It was
you.
a great try. Anyway, it's called Youth Before Youth. Do you know the movie?
No.
It's about reincarnation, and it's a Coppola movie from maybe 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely worth checking out. It's not it's not monumentally great, but it's really interesting. It's definitely worth checking out. As the old master kind of trying to summon up his talents for one last really great movie, and it almost makes it. But yeah, so Miss Eliade is this wrote all about rituals and initiation and
Right.
really the shamanism, really the first cultural anthropologist, and he's a giant. I didn't know he wrote novels, so this was a novel of his. And this woman, it's great. Now it's coming back. This is something that Emily would do a show on. Emily Moyer. He's found someone who's able to connect with past lives, and he keeps on trying to take her back to find like the Ur language. It takes her from Greek to Sanskrit to Phoenician, and keeps on going back to Atlantean.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens when he brings it to the original language. So that's what this movie is about. Definitely worth checking out. Very interesting ideas. And that's what the thing about the 70s, the novels were novels of ideas. You're talking about Philip K. Dick, Thomas Pynchon,
Jerzy Kosinski.
Just the writers. The writers were important then. There's nobody writing now that's important. I'm sorry. In the world of novels, at least that I've come across, and please send me one if you know of it. But that's it. But the ideas are in the movies. It's exploring, these themes, and now it's just exploring these little dweeby asshole personalities that I can't stand spending time with anymore. Just anyway, my take.
Well, you can't get it. I mean, we've witnessed the end of art. The death of art has occurred because everything now has to go through the cultural czars of intersectionality and critical race theory, and they have quotas in terms of the crew, quotas in terms of the cast, quotas in terms of the script, right? You can't.
Suffocating.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that real art can take place in an environment like that. It just becomes didactic and ideological, and it's nothing but party propaganda. And it may satisfy, I don't know, 10, 15% of the population because they're getting their fix, but it has no connection at all to any real art whatsoever.
Yeah.
It doesn't, art.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say art prompts uncomfortable, situations or questions, not just one side, by the way, not just this, ongoing, never-ending, ultimate question about white privilege and white guilt, but it asks more complex questions, has more complex kinds of potentialities that open things up versus close things down because of a prescribed cultural narrative, which is, what we're being forced to kind of endure and move through at this point in time.
Endure is the word.
Yeah. And is nothing of what James Joyce would call the sublime, and going back to ancient Greek writers, and that brings us to one other kind of point, maybe going back around with this constriction. Simon and Schuster, my least favorite publishing company, right?
Yeah.
So they have not only ditched Josh Hawley, as far as I can see, breaking their contract with him. Because he became a persona non grata, and publishing every book that someone has written for Hillary Clinton. I don't think she's capable of writing. And now they've given a $2 million advance to Hunter Biden for a book.
Imagine that.
That's an advance. That's not even payment for it. That's a fucking advance
for his
You know-
for his memoirs, which of course will be scrubbed mostly clean. And if there's anything in there that remotely relates to his decadent and just abhorrent, not aberrant, but abhorrent behavior, it will be wrapped in some sort of redemptive tale.
Right, and how wonderful his father is probably going to be.
Oh, you mean Jim Biden?
Whichever, you know. Yeah. So anyway, so that's the kind of stuff that breaks my heart. You know, sitting here, you know, struggling to publish really good books, and you know, just watching that crap go on. And you know, it finally dawned on me last year that the publishing business it's a money laundering business, just like the art business.
Yeah.
You know, that's all it is. He's just getting paid for just sitting quiet and not following up on whatever it is that brought him to drop those laptops off in the Dover computer shop.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but but we're still working on it. Chris is painting. Where's your bird?
Where's my bird?
Where's your bird?
Which one?
I don't know, the new one. The old one? What's nearby?
It's downstairs. There's one there.
What about this one?
Yeah, that'll do.
Can I show it?
Rufous-sided towhee. Yeah, I'm getting into birds.
So Chris has been painting, so that's good. So this is her almost latest one, a rufous-sided towhee. So she's working on birds, and I hope.
Oh, look at that! Wow.
Oh, thank you. I got a wow.
Yeah.
Look at that. Hey, look at that. Look at that, Rosie. It's a bird.
Rosie, it's a
Rosie,
bird. See,
it's a
bird.
that's the test. If she goes after the screen, we know it's a good bird. It's got some life quality to it.
Yeah.
So
well done, Chris.
So this
Thank
is
you.
what
Thank you,
yes,
Robert.
Chris has been doing a lot of these paintings. I'm working on a full-fledged book about this whole past COVID year as a as an inversion of the sacred. And it's unfortunately it started off, well, here's a few ideas, and it just keeps on getting broader and broader, but it's working out okay. Got 2 books to publish. I've got the Peter Lamborn Wilson book back. I just need to put some polishing touches onto that, and that's going to be a joint publishing with Autona Media, who does a lot of books. They're out of Brooklyn. They do a great job. One of the really fine small presses. And then second book of the Mindy's Fantasy trilogy. So,
Mindy Melts.
Mindy Melts. And that's really good. So, I'm way busy. So,
Good.
so that's good. And then spring will be here soon, and we'll have to
Daffodils are already coming up.
Good. Well,
that
let's try to enjoy the next few months before all these vaccinated people start creating these spiked proteins and throw themselves into an autoimmune state, which resembles another plague, because that's probably what's going to happen.
How could it not?
Yeah.
I mean, somebody just
Well-
put up a document, 700-page document of all these people who've died or have their life threatened by the vaccine.
Well, I've
700
been passing around a documentary. It's about an hour and 50 minutes long, and a lot of people have already seen it. Obviously, you can't watch it on YouTube because YouTube will not allow this thing.
Mhm.
But I'll leave a link to it's on Brighteon and I think Odyssey. So I'll leave a link in the description of the show. I highly recommend everybody taking an hour and 50 minutes of your life to watch this video. It breaks the current situation down into the test and into the so-called vaccine. And one of the things you'll find out with the test is that the test is actually a delivery system.
Yes.
Yes.
It is a
And this one, yeah.
It is a delivery system of nanoparticles
Yep.
Mhm.
that self-assemble and will essentially become the transmitting devices that hooks you up to the Internet of Things.
Mhm. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, and I'd recommend also you did a good mashup with Emily
Yeah,
yesterday.
that was really good. We watched it
So
last
and you
night.
got into that with that amongst as usual myriad other things with Emily.
And this is what David Martin's been saying. You know, it's not
David
a vaccine.
Martin. David Martin is in the vaccine part of this thing, and one of the things that he says, which is one of the more important things that comes out of this video, and there's a lot that's important, by the way, is that based on the definition of how this thing is assembled, it's not a vaccine.
It's not a vaccine.
It's actually a piece of medical equipment.
Right.
That's
how it's designated. Medical equipment.
Yeah, I actually quoted him on that in my book.
Yep.
So it's a medical device.
It's a medical device.
He's done yeoman's work, hasn't he? He's really been.
I think this has been a good time for him in terms of being able to break down the sort of assemblage of this thing.
Sometimes I have a little difficulty because he's so knowledgeable and he just throws out the technical terms, you know, but I can definitely follow him, but it's like I have to hold on and really pay attention. But he's brought so much good to light or bad.
Right. So everybody's asking about the video, link to the video. I'll put it in the description of the show, so you'll be able to get it from the two various sources. Let me just see if I can grab it quickly, and maybe I can put it in chat here. Give me 1 second.
Oh, you want to see it on here?
As I sent it around to a number of people. I'll also put a link up to the show that Emily and I did. You know, people can.
Yeah, that was excellent. We watched it last night.
Jump on that. Hold on a second. Yes.
Really enjoyed it.
Hold on. Here. I thought I had that link set up and sent to.
Yeah, I had the chat on the iPad going, but I can't.
You can't talk.
No, we're not adepts like you, Robert, that can read chat, find videos, and have an intelligent conversation simultaneously.
Yeah, my ADD serves me at certain points in time. I'll have to find that link again. I'm fairly certain I sent it out to a number of people, but it's just not showing up in some of these text exchanges. Anyway, okay. You guys have anything else you want to share before we get on out of here?
I can't think of a thing.
No, I think thanks for having us. Thanks to Chatlandia. I just really appreciate. We always are astounded, you know, that people show up and listen to us. We get always really nice responses from people, and you know, and it really keeps us going. You know, it keeps us going to just to hear some good things from people that we love. So I think that's all I got. You know, now. You know, just hang in there and keep being creative, keep making things beautiful, make your life beautiful, make yourself beautiful. You know, like me. And and as you always say, try to keep a sense of humor because the devil hates to be mocked.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The humor is essential.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can. When things are swirling around you and there's a potential of getting lost in the narrative, humor can be pretty elusive during those moments. But if you just step back a little bit, just even for a moment, you can begin to see sort of the dark irony around a lot of these things, and at the very least manage a mild chuckle, and you can start from there.
Steve doesn't even have to work at it. It just like rolls off his tongue. I don't know how he does it. It's just like comes right out.
I think it's a Gemini thing.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Chatlandia. Thanks.
It's good to be able to talk
thanks,
about
Rosie.
this.
So
Hammer it out.
next week, our guest for next week is actually in chat right now.
Who's that?
It's Sam the Miracle Man. That's Sam
Hey,
Shelley. Sam Shelley is going to be joining us next week.
Good.
And Sam has a very interesting story where he was plagued by a number of maladies and pretty intense ones most of his life. So he had the traditional kind of sickly kind of upbringing and existence, and then through using his mind was able to heal himself of every single condition
Good for you,
that
Sam.
he
Great.
was suffering from. So we're going to bring Sam on next week,
I love
and
those stories.
he's gonna share his story and perhaps how people can remove the trash from their brains. And that's a really good tool for us
I
to
look
have.
forward to that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right. I'll be back on Sunday night Astro Live. And you can find the Crimis at Logo Sophia, their link to their website.
SophiaBooks.com.
Logo Sophia Books. The link is in the description for the show. And you know the drill. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to sip what's possible. Bye for now.